Okay, awesome. Everyone, welcome. Thank you for being here today. And thank you to Dell for sponsoring this. We're here to talk today about the future of computing and what that looks like. And so who better than Dell to kind of talk us through that future? Before we begin, I think Mike had a couple words before we officially kicked off. If not, we'll catch him at the end. Okay. No, I think we're just going to go straight into the panel. Thank you all for being here today. I'm Rachel Joy Victor. I'm the co-founder of Fabric, which is focused on finding tools for the future of content production, looking at what the role that AI plays in that, and kind of creating for that future. Really excited to have with us here today Alex Porter, Erin Reilly, and Skylar. I'm forgetting your last name. Thomas. Alex Porter and Skylar are part of our cohort in Fabric, where we are incubating startups that are building the next generation of creative tools. So we're going to have some introductions, and then we're going to jump right in.
Fabulous. Thank you, Rachel. I'm excited to be here and to share a little bit about what our company does. I am the founder and CEO of ModTech Labs. We are an automated API-first solution for content generation and optimization. So for us, it really means making sure that we're playing back content at the highest quality for whoever is consuming it, whether that's a big LED wall for virtual production or something else, VR headset, you name it. And we have a quick video.
Yes, we do. There we go.
The jams.
Awesome, thank you. Erin?
Sure. Hi, I'm Erin Reilly. I'm a professor and the founding director of Texas Immersive Institute here at UT Austin. I am a serial entrepreneur and an experience designer, helping to teach the next generation how to create experiences for immersive experiences in the future with XR, including one of our sponsors is Dell Technologies. So it's kind of nice to be on the panel.
Hi, I'm Skylar Thomas. I'm the co-founder and CTO of PlaybookXR. Playbook is a collaborative spatial sandbox for media and entertainment. So we're cross-platform, collaborative, no code. Really, the point of Playbook is to allow creatives, regardless of their technical background, to communicate spatial concepts and collaborate with their team.
Awesome.
I'll show a little demo.
Awesome. Well, I think the exciting thing to talk about today is everyone's probably been hearing about, talking about AI for the last year and a half, 2 years. I feel like at this point in a bit of a frenzy. We're going to kind of go a little bit past what's being commonly discussed. I think we're talking a lot about generative AI in the public conversation, but we want to kind of go beyond that to think about what are other forms of AI? How are they going to kind of impact the next generation of experiences? So, Alex, can you talk a little bit about like how you're thinking about AI, what you're seeing kind of as the other layer that takes us deeper than generative?
Absolutely. So where we tend to play, because we are an AI-powered solution, is actually on the less common side, particularly around taking existing data. So that could be a model that someone built. It could be photogrammetry, a grouping of photos, could be videogrammetry, a grouping of videos. And we actually enhance that. So we're using models that we have trained and deploying those to make other people's content higher quality. And so it really is about not only allowing people to use their creative vision, but also that creative vision doesn't have to necessarily not be grounded, in like reality, right? We want to be able to take this plant here and put it into an experience. We want to be able to take a performance of a ballerina or something and put it into an experience. And you can't do that very easily unless you're able to actually reformat it and make sure that it's going to play back effectively where you want to see it. And again, for us, it could be a screen or a screen or a screen or something else that we don't even know about yet. It really is about that sort of multimodal format of how are you deploying your content.
I think the where you want to see it piece is really big. Can you talk about like what that means and like how does that intersect with what we're talking about when we talk about Edge AI?
Absolutely. So transmedia application, right? That's one word for it. That's the word that we've adopted. I know that there are a lot of other ways that people talk about it. But, for I think any type of content, we work a lot with entertainment and media like studios. So if you're thinking about, content that you put into a movie, that's incredibly high quality content that would not play back well in a game engine. It would not play back well on a phone or even necessarily on the web, right? And so you have to be able to reformat, repurpose, and tweak those things effectively. And part of that is the compute piece, of course. You have to be able to compute it in a quick amount of time, and you have to be able to use the resources that you have. I don't know about all of you. I have a server farm, but not everybody does. And so the reality is you need to be able to actually functionally convert those things in a meaningful way that is affordable and quick. And it's that deployment across all of those devices and channels that I think will make things more approachable and make it easier for creatives to really apply these into any type of experience.
Speaking of experiences across platforms and transmedia kind of experiences, Erin, you're kind of one of the experts on transmedia. Can you talk about what that looks like in the context of spatial computing now?
Yeah, sure. I completely agree with you. I actually have a lot of clients who come in, and as an experience designer, they're saying, we've just done something for a dome, and we need to, from a business standpoint, how do we actually start taking that material across other channels? So from an experience side, you're really trying, in a spatial computing standpoint, avoid latency. No user wants something that's going to like hiccup along the way. So being able to take something from a dome and then being able to put it out into the streets. So I'm walking along and perhaps there's some sort of brand activation tied to a major story franchise. And how can I like be walking along and the screens on the windows now become live, and because they perhaps are connected to my phone, because we're talking about interoperability, I can actually have some personalized message shared with me that will hook me in to go into that retail store and dive deeper into that story. Another thing is like thinking about autonomous vehicles now are available to take a lot of that entertainment and then put it back into like us on the go. So when we're not having to drive, we can actually take the music from the experience, take the stories and the characters, sit next to them. And what's lovely is with spatial computing is it's focused on occlusion, right? So it's the shadows are there, the 3D objects are there, the depth is there. I feel like I'm having a relationship even though it's a digital character. So it's a blending of the physical and digital and voice voice environments that makes me feel like as a user, I am now part of that story. And that's very personalized.
I think the great part about how you're framing spatial computing, Erin, is like Apple obviously released the Vision Pro. I don't know if anyone has had the chance to try it and take it for a spin yet. But I think in the context of Vision Pro, we talk a lot about like spatial computing as being about like 3D or kind of 3D interfaces, but it kind of goes beyond that, right? It's really about that phygital blending of physical and digital, and like that contextual experience that like meets you where you are. So as you mentioned latency. I think that's a big thing that we need to think about for responsiveness, right? Like the great thing about spatial computing, what it can really offer is the ability to feel like the experience is responding to you, that you're having something that knows who you are, that knows where you've been, but that's not really possible without latency. And so I think that kind of takes us back to optimization. Can you talk us through a little bit about like what's behind the scenes with optimization? What are the things to think about?
Yeah, so from where we sit, we actually have a tool set that is built on our primary sort of API. It's called ModOpti. That tool specifically is actually focused on a couple of really low-hanging fruit pieces for optimization. So we're talking meshes and textures. And what that means to normal humans, which I am not anymore. Meshes are essentially what I like to think of as the skin or the bones of your digital asset. So it's what sort of creates the form, if you will. And textures is what gives you the color, the look, the feel, right? Whether that is skin, whether that is hair, whether that is some other type of material. And so those two things typically can be done in very high resolution, where they cost a lot of compute to functionally play back, or they can be optimized in a way where they play in a lower resolution. Hopefully not as visually different, but definitely less on the compute side. So what you want to do is you want to keep the look and the feel of the asset really very high quality visually, while minimizing the amount of compute that you're using to do it. And that will help with the latency, right? The smaller the data packet is, the more effective your processing and pushing of the data is going to be as you're trying to experience it in that sort of real-time world. And so for us, there are a ton of other ways to optimize data. There's everything from lighting to the way that your scenes are laid out. We work a lot in real-time Unreal Engine, Unity Engine, and other types of formats like that, but there's a wide variety of other ways to do it. In the old school, you would render these things out and then they would just be sort of fixed. And so we're seeing a lot of opportunity to sort of improve all of those things by just increasing that processing power, making sure that the look is high quality and the compute and the playback is really low latency.
So Skylar, with Playbook, because you're building something that's across browser and headset, you're thinking, and you're trying to facilitate real-time collaboration, you're also thinking about lack of latency, right? Because you don't want people who are in different contexts to be seeing things out of sync. What are ways that you're thinking about what optimization looks like and how it can facilitate collaboration?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of this, like when in designing a cross-platform experience, the reason why we did that in the first place is because we keep in mind that there's certain work that's better done on desktop in that familiar medium, and then certain work that's better done in an immersive context. We really tried to lean into starting with, 2D is a very precise and constrained mode of input, and it's also pretty standard. Everyone is used to how to interact and how to collaborate in that constrained XY axes. And then, when we move into 3D, we can't pretend like those are at all the same thing. They're fundamentally different, but they need to work in harmony. 3D is just an inherently more human mode of input, and it's more gestural. And in doing so, you're going to want to make sure that the latency and that responsiveness that is kind of contextually aware. Trying to make sure that our XR editor was really responding to the user's breadth of input while not making them feel out of control or imprecise, or now likely they can't collaborate with someone who might be on web and coming from a different another platform.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful for us to kind of start framing the edge AI piece, right? Like, how are we thinking about optimization? How are we thinking about reducing latency so that we can have this type of responsiveness enabled. I want us to spend like maybe the rest of our time talking a bit more about like what does that then enable, right? What are those types of categories of experiences? And Erin, I think you started to get into it. I think when we think about spatial experiences or contextual experiences, a very kind of low-hanging fruit example that maybe some of you have participated in if you've been to Universal, theme parks, Diagon Alley, when you're thinking about like IoT, if you have your wand and you stand in a specific space, you wave your wand and you're able to trigger something magical, right? It's a really magical feeling that's enabled by something that's local and contextualized. That's very like the baseline of kind of experiences that are possible, right? The next generation version of that is, oh, I'm not just, it's not just a universal experience that everyone gets to wave the wand and the same thing happens. Yeah. Depending on my progression, right? Like maybe I worked my way up in the wizarding ranks, or maybe I'm Harry Potter or I'm Dumbledore. The world is going to respond a little differently to me, right? So the responsiveness isn't just about being there. It's about you as a person being there in that experience. Or maybe it's about taking in real-time data input of like, oh, it responds differently if it's a sunny day versus if it's a cloudy day, right? So I think that's kind of one layer, right, of how, as we start to think about how responsiveness evolves, it can take in more contextual information. Erin, I know you have lots more thoughts on this.
I have a lot of thoughts, and I also have a lot of prototypes in my lab. Well, one of the things just going on the IoT, because I think that's really important as we move into spatial computing, is that it's not just the digital assets that are being overlaid, but they're interacting with sensors. And to create the personalization, one of my prototypes in the lab is this experience for children called Winkle Beans, and it's little wooden monsters with magnetic interchangeable pieces. But what's great about it is the toy becomes the controller. So we're used to our kids today having game controllers, but now their toys can be the controller, and without latency in a 3D world, spatial world, those toys now can actually interact with the entire story world coming out and playing on our bedroom floor or on our living room floor. Now, there's 6 Winkle Beans, so every one of us could actually have a different character, and we could interact with this story, and the story would evolve based on our manipulation of our toys. So if you were ever in like Toys to Life, like with Skylanders and things, like that was just like a basic what's happening when we start moving into spatial computing and playing from a child's perspective. And I always go to children because that's the generation that's going to adopt this the fastest. They're the ones that are like, oh, if they're having a good time understanding it, their families and their parents are going to be like, buy that and buy more of that, right? So that's a good one. There's another example of like just going to thinking about IKEA. Everyone's probably used the IKEA app and it's augmented reality where you're like, oh, let me decorate my apartment, right? So now we're going to Gen Z. They're moving out, they're getting their own apartments. But now they don't even need to do that. They could be in the retail, having a great experience, and just with natural user interface, not even touching a controller, I could change my whole environment different than what Skylar would want. And I think that's really important. We could have a debate on like, no, I want it blue. No, I want it green. And it could change right there automatically for us. So it's a great kind of multiplayer participatory nature of getting us back into those physical spaces, not just on our digital screens, to engage and participate in how we change how we live and learn and work.
I was just going to add to that. So we've been using Playbook a lot with filmmakers recently for use with previs and storyboarding. And, because you're constrained by the assets you're able to bring into, especially like an immersive scene, as you were mentioning, we are using AI to kind of bring it to that higher level of fidelity. And what that's enabled, this has been played around with more and more as it's, the latency has been brought further and further down, is you kind of like do this dance with the AI because it's reacting to you and you're able to kind of like riff off of it, and you might move a cube in a certain way and you're like blocking your scene, and the character looks a certain way, and I'm like, oh, I see that, and now I can kind of adjust for that. So that kind of immediate back and forth has created this kind of new dynamic where you're interacting with something that's both you and it's also not you, so it's known, it's also surprising, and that has been really interesting to see, specifically the filmmaker users being able to kind of leverage that for their storyboards.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to add user-generated content as a whole other, additional spectrum that plays into both of those use cases, and at large into, gaming, into other creation of different types of immersion and education. And one of the things that we also sit in on the user-generated side is content creation. And so for us, a lot of that has been experimenting with the acronyms of machine-generated imagery. Okay, so I'm talking NERFs and Gaussian splats and those variety of things. And the reality is they're bringing the bar down significantly. It was really, really challenging to actually be able to take all of the images and compile all of the images and process all of them and get out something really functional and beautiful to be able to put into, experience. And now that bar is coming down because the capture side itself has been made more simplified because the machine learning can sort of overcome some of those issues. And so I think that there's a whole other spectrum of things that'll be happening on the creative side that will just add to all of that as well.
Yeah, I'm teaching a creativity and AI workflow process class right now, and I'm moving into character generation and 3D world generations, and it's amazing how quickly someone who doesn't feel like I'm a creative, I have ideas, but I'm not an artist, all of a sudden can jump into this space and participate.
And I think one of the great things about like what you're talking about with enabling the kind of real-time world capture, right? That becomes a big piece when we start thinking about, going back to the idea of like emergent experience, right? That comes out of having a good amount of data that understands who the self is, and then data that understands what the environment is, right? And so when we're more accurately able to capture the environment, we're more accurately able to respond. And I think the great part is like, it's also moving past narrative, right? It's not just a narrative thing. It's not just like for play experiences. It's very functional, right? It's I have 45 minutes in between appointments. My next appointment is like a 5-minute walk away. What do I do with the 40 minutes? Yes, I could be scrolling on my phone, but also how am I like pushing that experience to the physical environment? How am I being aware of like, this real-time capture, knowing what's happening contextually in the environment around me and being like, oh, over there are flowers blooming and you can go smell the flowers, or over there's an event happening, go pop in, right? That's the type of kind of contextual experience that's enabled with that category of responsiveness. I know we're running short on time, but I want to make sure we talk a bit about like how do we make sure those things happen? How do we build those tools of the future to support those kind of experiences being built, right? Because that's a new kind of category of experience. Skylar, can you talk a bit about...
Don't worry about rushing. This is too good a conversation.
Okay, great. You can lean in. I love that. Yes, sorry. Tools that help us build these types of things. What are considerations on that end?
Yeah, and again, I think and touching on it earlier again too, really making sure that we were saying parity, but again, it's just really like playing up to that kind of superpower that user who's coming in, being able to both switch context. So we've found that our users using the web editor in 2D are using that for the more like longer term, more detailed work, where they're able to kind of like from that God perspective plan out their scene. If they're blocking a shot, if they're planning a level for a video game, you can have that abstraction and that remove, and that's really useful. Like there's a reason why we all day long we still sit on laptops and phones that are removed from our faces and bodies. But then when you're inside of the experience, you are able to kind of have that contextually aware and responsive experience, being able to maybe capture a shot with like you're physically holding a camera. Oh, I can see now at this scale this doesn't work. I need to adjust this, and you really get that more gestural, more human perspective on whatever you're building. And so being able to switch between those contexts fluidly without breaking that feedback loop and breaking that momentum creatively was a big goal that we had in designing the actual interface for Playbook. Kind of like when you go to set up your desk and you go to set up at your desk in a different location. It's not the same, but you have a feeling for what the system is, and like what to expect. You're not like having to stop, pause. Okay, what was I doing? That was a big thing. So in building Playbook as a tool for enabling immersive experiences is really what we shot for to capture.
Yeah, because I think the exciting thing is like if we think about how our memory operates, our memory is very spatial, right? And so when we lean into spatial tools, we're able to kind of tap into that perceptual understanding, our proprioception, the way our body moves and operates. I think a really interesting thing about kind of where Playbook is evolving to and kind of where we see tools evolving to in general is being able to support that type of experiences not just as like a static thing, but with like real-time data behind it, you know, with digital twins, with that kind of whole aspect of types of experiences. Erin, do you have some thoughts on digital twins?
Totally do. Let's just check this down. What I love is like what you're describing is embodiment, right? We're not just using our hands anymore. We're fully embodying the movement of the space. And from a digital twin perspective, if you understand what digital twins are, we talk about it a lot with the cities. Cities are now creating digital twins with all the different sensors in a space. But I like to think about the research I'm doing is more digital twins of the self. Like we've already quantified ourselves. Right? How many of you are like me that has something on your arm tracking all of your data? But now that data can actually be connected to my avatar. And I think one of the first was Ready Player Me that actually created an interoperable, persistent avatar that allows me to move across different spaces. So I have Professor Moxie in the world out there. As I start putting more of my quantitative self into my digital twin, I'm hoping that one day it will teach my classes. I mean, like that would be great. Let me just duplicate myself and it go off and do things on its own. It could go to a conference, so that way I don't have FOMO anymore. And then it would report back to me, which is actually, I was literally at another panel yesterday and someone was saying, I really want something to do conferences and like go back and report to it. And I'm like, I can build that right now. I can already build that right now. That's a great startup. Let's do it. So think about how your avatar not only is just something that is like a cute thing you replicate year over year, but it becomes kind of like an extension of yourself. Like Marshall McLuhan talked about that these tools were an extension of our hand. And he was right. Like in the 1950s. Now we're just talking about that it's not a tool, it's actually a representation using all these tools of ourself out into that digital world, into that spatial world where it can come alive.
Yeah.
And for us, you know, where we sit is we see ourselves as an enablement tool set. So we are not the ones typically capturing the content. We're not the ones typically deploying the content, but we're a layer in between, middleware, for those who know that term, where we sit and we are enabling not just artists, but also people that have an artistic vision and a creativity that they want to explore and put out there, but they don't know all the tooling layers. They don't understand what a secondary map is if you're creating something for a game. They don't necessarily understand what meshes or textures are, but they know that they want their content to run effectively where they're playing it back. And so for us, that really is where we sit, building this suite of tools that makes it easier and faster for you to do those down and dirty, like technical pieces, to actually deploy that creative content where you want it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think from what you're saying, Erin, about the quantified self, right, and like these experiences that support us and enable us to live better, that's something that has to follow us around, right? It's something that has to be on our desktop devices, something that's also on our smartwatches, and that's one of the things I enjoy when we talk about optimization is I think there's like one view of optimization, which is like, it's just about like, you know, upscaling and downscaling assets. Yeah. But I think the philosophy behind it is it's the right format at the right time. So it's pushing all that, like worry about that to the back end, but then making sure that there's this experience that feels continuous, this experience that feels responsive, this experience that feels persistent. As we look forward to like the future of edge AI and spatial computing, any kind of final thoughts of like what you're excited about to see as we move more towards this future?
For us, we're just really digging in on creating more functional algorithms that can run on any computer, right? I mentioned earlier, you know, we don't all have servers at our beck and call, but the reality is, you know, computers, personal computers are becoming more and more effective at doing these types of things when the tooling is built to function on those computers. And so that's where we're sitting, really making sure that these things can be deployed to any system and that all the systems can effectively recognize the content at its best quality.
So I think where we are is actually finally turning a corner. I wrote a lot in my past about how how we've had to code switch our entire life, right? We've had to move between looking at our screens and then participating in our digital, and we've always wanted this seamlessness between blending our digital and physical world, and now it's available right now. So a lot of the things that are on my shelf in the lab can finally come off and become a reality. I would say if we were pushing it even further, I always remember one of the design fictions that we worked on with Corning called Day of Glass. It was from 2012, and it was a persistent world where from the moment I woke up all the way to going to work, to going to check with my doctor, to going and playing and going out at night, I had kind of this like layer that was fully present and persistent and connected with me. Not that it was an overload like we see in so many dystopian movies, but it was just what I needed in order to kind of like support me in my day and make it feel more personalized to who I am versus to who you are. And I think that's something we're all looking for.
Kind of in a similar vein, it would definitely, so with Playbook, obviously, so the goal was always to allow creatives to take the idea in their head and get it out onto the proverbial paper so that they can share it with their teams. And I touched a little bit on the real-time AI rendering and how that kind of like tenfold, communicating that idea in a higher fidelity. Or kind of looking towards like what is like that 10 years in the future version of that kind of fluidity, being able to be inside of an experience and see it, reacting, to your thoughts. If I am dragging out a character, it already has that contextual awareness of what are the physics of this room that I just put this character in. It already might know the sounds, the animations, being able to like fully build that world and build it in, with the speed of thought. That is going to be really exciting to be able to be inside of that. So that's something that we're actively running towards. Not there yet, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all super exciting. I think the thing that I get excited about whenever I think about what it means to design for the user, we are thinking about multiple categories of what it means to be a user, right? There's one aspect of like the business model, right? Of like, this is how the person wants to spend money. There's the aspect of UX of like, how is this functionally supporting the user? And then there's an aspect of play, right? Like, what is the character identity of this person within this experience? And infinitely many more layers of that, right? I think in the future, as we think towards responsiveness, we're going to, because of where AI is headed in terms of being optimized for each platform, we're able to kind of have that full circle, right, of the loop of capture level of user data, of environmental data, using that to build a responsive experience and all feeding back in. And I think that's the great thing about where we're headed. I'm excited to see how that evolves, and I think you all, as being part of that conversation, are going to be part of making that happen. So thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Skylar, Erin, and Alex. Thank you, Grit Lively, for hosting us, and Dell and NVIDIA for sponsoring this.